Good afternoon and welcome to Beyond the Lines podcast. I'm your host, Nikki Watson, and I'm here on this. I would say gloomy because it's like rainy, but I think it's. I was gonna say I don't even know what day it is. Wednesday, it's Wednesday. It's because I'm wearing these glasses. That's why I can't remember the day. Pretty much. How's everybody doing? Welcome. We're going to do this sort of quickly because I'm on a time crunch. I'm on a time crunch here. But let's listen to some music because we're going to do a little bit of a hag watch today for fun because I was listening to it anyway and I figured, well, might as well go for it. So let me just share this here real quick. Here, I'll play this music as we pull it up. What do you guys like? I'm wasting time. You're wasting time, Nikki. How about now we like The Rock, right? The Rock. And here's the other thing I want to say is that I know that I did say like I wasn't going to come back on here again without curling my hair for obvious reasons. But like I said, I'm in a hurry. So oh gosh, okay. Whatever. Let's go. Okay, we're going to share. We're going to share. Oh, just smack in the face, just like that, huh? Well, that's what it feels like. It is an assault. It is. It's an assault. And XF said it's so good. Like we're facing our abusers. It's so true. All right, let's go. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm sorry. My disclaimer is my apologies in advance, but
I'm going to jump into things today. Really interesting week that we have had here. Let me start with a bunch of questions and try and pull them together.
Oh, this is her intro. Hold on. I just want to say something real quick. So I did go to college for communication studies. I know. I know. I did graduate as well with a degree. So obviously I'm using it. Clearly this is me using my college education to serve the world and to give back, obviously. So I technically am a comms person. Okay, I technically am. So this really, Miss Richardson, I just want to let you know that this is all volunteer work that I am building my resume. Okay, so as your unasked comms person, I'm giving some feedback. Okay, great. Ugh.
Hey everybody!
Really,
welcome back to Politics Chat on Tuesday at 6 o'clock. Sorry,
really
I'm running late. I have had meetings all day, and it got.
Okay, let's just skip ahead a little bit.
Hope they can finish it.
Okay.
Idlewild, Redding, California. Desperately need. You can't see here because I've got all kinds of lights on, but it's quite dark outside. So maybe take what I say with maybe a whole shaker of salt.
Oh, I know what she was saying. She
asked what I thought about Robert Reich's piece today, in which he said that the sleeping giant has awakened. And I'm going to agree. Now, you should be aware that I've been thinking this is coming now for literally years. So maybe take what I say with maybe a whole shaker of salt. But it feels to me like things are different now than they were 10 days ago. And that the American people are really paying attention now to what Trump and his loyalists are doing, and they are no longer giving those things the benefit of the doubt, which, people usually do at the beginning of an administration. They tend to say, oh, well, it's going to be good. It's going to be good change. And look at all that person promised, and we're going to get all that stuff. And in fact, we know from the polls, which are lower by the day, that the people who voted for Trump expecting him, for example, to make the economy better and lower inflation, are dealing with the fact that the opposite has happened, that in fact, unemployment is higher and inflation is rising. And, there are fewer job openings, and a lot of the things that he promised have not only not come to pass, we've seen the opposite. So they're looking at that. They're also looking at the fact, and I think this one's really interesting, that a lot of people thought that Trump was simply going to get rid of the criminal undocumented immigrants amongst us. And as I've said, we had the mechanisms to do that anyway. One of the issues that, we had the mechanism to do that anyway, but when he kept talking about getting rid of the worst of the worst and so on and so forth, what a lot of people didn't realize, and I remember having this argument with a MAGA voter back in last December, that
Wait, what?
the people in his orbit maintain that the very act of crossing the border without documentation makes you a criminal who is the worst of the worst.
When were you?
And a lot of people didn't expect to see grandmothers who'd been here for 30 years and all the people who have become part of the fabric of the United States be deported or even be rendered to third countries. And they're not happy with seeing that. And they're not happy with seeing the masked ICE agents on the streets. And they're not happy with the use of American troops in cities as well. So he's underwater on that. And he's underwater on all the other issues that he said he would do. And if you remember back during the campaign, I kept saying he's promising everything to everyone, even when the things he's promising are mutually incompatible. And you can't be wet and dry at the
Oh, okay. Not like the Democrats at all, promising everything in the kitchen sink, right? Agenda 47. Go back and look at it. Go back and read. Control F, search for Agenda 47 and read what it says.
Same time. So lots of people are going to get unhappy, and that's what you're seeing now. And we're coming now into the fall, into a period when you're going to see a lot of the policies that the administration has put in place starting really to have teeth, starting really to take effect, not least, and I'll talk more about this in the future, in a little bit, the rise in the cost of health premiums for people who are buying healthcare insurance on the Affordable Care Act markets are facing extraordinary jumps in their premiums because of the what do they call it? The OBBBA, the One Big Beautiful Act, which is what they are calling the Budget Reconciliation Bill Act, that the Republicans passed in July. It got rid of the tax credits or the credits for purchasing health insurance for people made between 100 and 400% of the.
It's not that much more, and it's a regulation of the system. XF and Nick did a great little podcast. Well, Nick was on the live stream and talked a little bit about health insurance premiums and how Obamacare, and then how the marketplace has just changed the way that things can be. It's just like a bloated system, and so people are going to be paying more because it is a rollback of things that were bloated from the pandemic, but then also from the Biden administration. So it is a fundamental difference of opinion as far as do you want government to be paying for all of these health insurance policies? People that may not need health insurance. People that don't need. We were just listening to a clip about people that they can choose their own policy. But when you have to go through the marketplace and government is subsidizing the health insurance for everybody that has to go through the marketplace, it takes away the opportunity for choice, but then it also, you know, messes with the cost of what things, I mean, what services cost. So it's a very thick, you know, history of how these systems have been built. And so typically Republicans will lower things like that and Democrats will increase government spending. So I think though that people expected this, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I don't know, obviously, because this is an entertainment show. And I obviously don't know about the insurance business. I do, however, know that people that are self-employed have to get their own health insurance, and some of them do health savings accounts. Some of them pay out of pocket because the provider that you want to go see doesn't take your insurance, because these insurance companies don't always pay out because of the relationship between the health insurance provider dictating the cost of services, right? So, and children will always be provided for. But so I think it's a very, again, I don't necessarily want to speak to it, but I do want to say that I don't think she knows what she's talking about any more than I know what I'm talking about. So to say that people are unhappy with this and this is contributing to the unhappiness, I actually would say that this is exactly what people thought was going to happen. And it's a regulation of the system. It's a regulation of the nervous system of this bloated government that we have with spending and what about, I mean, again, that's not what this is about. This show is not about that specifically, but about the fraud that's in Medicare and Medicaid. I mean, there was just those, what was it, 12 people that were charged with insurance fraud. I mean, so there's a lot of corruption within the system. And so anyway, she's just pulling out one little piece of information, which is people are unhappy with it. And I think that there's anybody that lives in the world, I don't know who pays for her health insurance, but I would say that anybody in the world understands that it's a very, very complex situation. And spending any amount of time on just one portion of it would do far more justice than I think trying to use a broad brush to do that. Anyway, my point is that I think that this is what people expected. I don't think this is a surprise at all.
Federal poverty level. And that means that their premiums have gone up significantly, but that also means that healthier people have chosen not to enter the healthcare market. And that has meant that premiums for the people who are in it have also leaped up. And that's going to come back in before the end of this to haunt us in this moment. So
what?
So there is this dropping, the sense of dropping popularity for Trump. But what happened in the last 10 days seems to me to feel different. And I think to Robert Reich as well. And that is on the heels of the murder of Charlie Kirk, the right-wing activist in Utah, about 10 days ago now. I think I've a little bit lost track of time. What you saw was the attempt of loyalists around the president to weaponize that murder to go after people they consider their political opponents before anybody had any idea even who the murderer was. And again, that person is now in custody, but still.
Okay, so all due respect, Ms. Richardson, you're the one that came out and said that he wasn't someone on the left, as MAGA has said, but he was somebody actually that was a Republican. He came from he was a Republican family, and then you even threw the Groyper conspiracy in there somehow. I don't know where you're getting your information, probably somewhere on Substack, the cesspool that it is. So you are not, I see you walking back. I see you walking back a little bit saying, well, even though someone's in custody, we still have no idea. You sure as heck thought that you had some sort of an idea, enough that you were criticizing MAGA, for coming out and claiming that the motive was due to someone on the left. When I thought that you are the sort of official storyteller, right? You're getting your information from official sources, right? You're not speculating, except when you say it appears or I sense or whatever your words are that you're using to speculate. I think that also too, for you specific, and I'm getting off track a little bit here, but I think that we should differentiate between when you're acting as a historian and when you're acting as a political commentator, because I think it's really confusing for your audience because they're assuming that what you're saying is factual and true when really you're just running the stories that you're reading from left-wing, you know what I mean, Robert Reich Substack accounts, and you know, CNN and WAPO and Politico and all those actually, which you would say are, you know, probably defending Trump in some ways. I think you would probably say in some weird way if you had the opportunity to. So I actually think that you should differentiate those two because it's really confusing to your audience because, like I said, you're assuming. So now you're saying that that it's now given what there's a turning, things feel different now after the horrific public assassination of Charlie Kirk. You're saying that the Trump administration is weaponizing it against people that they disagree with, and criticizing the response. You're not even criticizing that it actually even happened. You're not even acknowledging that it actually really happened. Actually, so you know you're saying that. I mean, you're rattling it off, and then you're sort of switching, and then you're making it be about this thing when the tragedy in and of itself is the horrificness. You know, like that is the story. And you wanted to so quickly back on that Friday, 2 days after he was killed, you so quickly went to wanting to weaponize it, right? As a like the response, right? Instead of acknowledging the fact that it in and of itself was horrific. It was sort of like a switch to making it be about like, oh, and MAGA was so quick to, you know, and then now it sounds like you're saying that Trump is wildly unpopular. In addition, you know, not just because of these other things that we knew were coming. He's unpopular because now he's weaponizing this horrific thing that has to do with politics, that has to do with the Trump administration, because we all just found out over the week just how much of an integral part Charlie Kirk was in helping to get Trump elected, helping to create the Maha and MAGA coalition, right? Just how much of a role he played with his advocacy and work to help get a significant part of the voter bloc to get engaged and to go vote. And so if I know you're a historian, but if you're in the political arena here, you know, you can't just say, I don't know, you know, about this or this, but you're speaking on it authoritatively, you see. So that's confusing again to people that are just watching it because they're mistaking your authority, you know, your expertise in history, so you say. So anyway, so I think it's just super strange. This is an opinion show. This is just my opinion. I think it's super strange to make that connection there, that Trump is unpopular because he is, and I know where you're going with this, so let's go there.
Still is alleged because there's not been a trial and we haven't seen evidence and so on. But even before that, there was this concerted effort to tar everybody who did not agree with Trump and MAGA as a terrorist, or as they or them. Or
so just catching up again. So you know that people that voted for Donald Trump in 2016, because there was the Russia collusion hoax, there was the impeachment trials, all that. You know, people didn't, and then the pandemic happened in 2020. So people were afraid to talk about their support for Trump. Right. And then after the stolen election, people weren't even allowed to talk about the election. And especially after January 6th, which I know you have an opinion on. But you know that political prisoners, I mean, Tina Peters is still in jail today. So people have been kicked off. I mean, again, we go over this over and over and over again, but for you to now sit here and claim that, you know, now everybody that disagree, you're the one that's taking the focus of this, again, horrific murder. You're shifting it of a political opponent, because he was very open about his politics. Like, obviously he was doing something from a political perspective, right? He was a conservative activist. I know you want to call him a right-wing activist, but he was technically a conservative activist, right? I mean, he was advocating for the Republican Party. He was clearly, you know, helping, you know, get Trump elected, right? So he was a political operative. And so now you're taking this and you're saying, well, now Trump is weaponizing it against anybody who disagrees with him, calling they, them, anybody that isn't MAGA a terrorist? I haven't seen that actual claim anywhere. But I don't think that that's, I know you're taking it very personally. I get that. But you know what everybody has just been through, right? It wasn't too long ago that you were calling MAGA extremists, right? I mean, you've been calling Trump names and making connections to fascism and Nazis and you know, all these extreme MAGA extremism, radical MAGA extremism. You've been talking about this for years. You've been saying these words and characterizing these people like this for years. So I'm not really sure what now you're ringing the bell on that. Now everybody that Trump disagrees with is now
or the Democrats or the left was responsible for this murder. That, I think, made people extremely uncomfortable, as it was very clear it was part of an attempt to stop criticism of the administration. And you saw that.
No. Charlie Kirk's assassination stopped criticism of the Trump administration. Okay? The Trump administration isn't trying to stop criticism of the Trump administration. Let's just be clear. Charlie Kirk's public assassination that everybody saw on their phones, stopped criticism of the Trump administration. I don't know why we have to keep going over this over and over again, but I know it's strange. So he's not trying to curb your enthusiasm in a way. He's not trying to silence you. Or, you know, he wants well, I'm not going to speculate on what he wants, but it would be helpful if people started telling the truth. I mean, that's where the origination of fake news came from. That's my problem with media, and sort of why I'm doing this right now, is because at one point you have to tell the truth. You can't just tell some of it and then fill it in with all of these narratives and confuse people. And you know, there are ethical and moral concerns when it comes to this type of activity. And so he's not using, the Trump administration isn't trying to silence people that they disagree with.
finally with the chair of the Federal Communications Commission, Brendan Carr, saying on a podcast of a right-wing podcaster who before the election was one of those who was being funded by Russia. Carr saying that.
Okay, so she's talking about Benny Johnson again, and she's actually defaming Benny Johnson again because she did this in the other video. So if you look up Benny Johnson, do it yourself. You can look up the story about how the Biden administration came out with, what was it, a report or something that Benny and Tim Cast or Tim Pool and what's her fit, the other girl, that they were somehow connected to a company, that their media company had gotten money from a Russian. I don't even, so you can look that up yourself. But inevitably there was no relationship that it was credible. And so you can look it up yourself. And so for her to say that Benny Johnson before the election was getting money from the Russians, I mean, that was, do I have to look it up? Or, because I don't really have a ton of time right now. You know, when I run this through the Claude, hey, Claude, by the way, hope you're doing well today. Hope all's well. I don't want Claude to say that I'm not doing my due diligence. Here, look. Just look it up. Just look up Benny Johnson and yeah, dude, yeah, just look it up. An indictment filed Wednesday alleges a media company linked to 6 conservative influencers, including well-known personalities Tim Pool, Dave Rubin, and Benny Johnson, was secretly funded. This is the dumbest shit ever, by the way. Was secretly funded by Russian state media employees to turn out English language videos that were often consistent with the Kremlin's interests in amplifying U.S. domestic divisions in order to weaken U.S. opposition to Russian interests, like its war in Ukraine. Okay. So look, the U.S. Justice Department doesn't allege any wrongdoing by the influencers, some of whom it says were given false information about the source of the company's funding. Instead, it accuses 2 employees of RT, a Russian state media company, of funneling nearly $10 million to a Tennessee-based content creation company for Russia-friendly content. Okay. So let's just listen to what she says again, which is
ABC News Better Thing
about Benny Johnson.
With the chair of the Federal Communications Commission.
Okay, because Benny Johnson did an interview with Brendan Carr.
An attempt to stop criticism of the administration. And you saw that finally with the chair of the Federal Communications Commission, Brendan Carr, saying on a podcast of a right-wing podcaster who before the election was one of those who was being funded by Russia. Carr saying that
he was being funded by, who was before the election being funded by Russia? That's, are you at liberty to say, ma'am? I also want to clarify that the White House, because we're talking about official statements here, the White House and Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said that the White House and President Trump had nothing to do. Now, you can speculate and say that, he's a liar, he lies about everything, that's fine. But the official record, ma'am, is that Trump and the White House has nothing to do with this. And so now you're setting up the serve for your audience, like Trump pressured Brendan Carr to go on and to fire Jimmy Kimmel or whatever, to silence him because he disagreed with Trump, which is not true. Okay. So it's just your interpretation of it. You see what I mean? It's your opinion. And you're getting paid to what? Tell people what they want to hear because it feels good, because it makes sense of a senseless world. I don't know. But yeah, we don't have a conclusion on that. This is a developing story. So Benny Johnson had on Brendan Carr, but you're not telling the truth about Benny Johnson here.
ABC News better think about continuing to have comedian Jimmy Kimmel on air because it needed a broadcast license, and there were other ways in which the FCC could come down on that person or on that company because they were permitting the spread of they couched it as an attack on the circumstances around Charlie Kirk's murder. But in fact, if you watch Jimmy Kimmel, which I had not until after this, you see that basically his monologues are a litany of attacks on Trump. And that, if you don't know Kimmel, it seems pretty clear that's what was really going on. And that really came home to a lot of people for whom I think the Constitution and the rights that we enjoy in the United States seem somewhat abstract, that they couldn't think they could lose them. And all of a sudden, a number of people, including Ted Cruz, who is a senator from Texas, but who seems to spend most of his time now with it running his podcast, including Tucker Carlson, a right-wing media personality, a lot of people who use their platforms in ways that can certainly be offensive, sort of said, wait a minute here, we've really got to protect the Constitution. And the outcry among the American people with the sudden recognition that they too could be on the wrong side of a government that was willing to do that made such pressure on Disney, which owns ABC, which is the employer of, or the group that runs Jimmy Kimmel Live, reversed course yesterday, and Jimmy Kimmel will be back on the air tonight. Jimmy Kimmel Live will be back on the air tonight, and people have said, will he have been cowed? And in that case, hasn't everybody lost? Now, listen, I am not somebody who knows that much at all about that TV world, but if you look at what Stephen Colbert did after.
So she has been doing this thing where she's really separating herself from Jimmy Kimmel. She's been saying, like, I don't watch TV. I haven't seen Jimmy Kimmel. I don't watch his show. I don't know anything about his show. This is the first time I've watched his show. When everybody else on X is saying, looks like Jimmy Kimmel got his monologue talking points from Heather Cox Richardson. So go ahead, keep going now.
His show was not renewed. He has certainly, I think, not pulled any punches at all. I mean, I think he's more outspoken than he was before. And I would be shocked if Kimmel doesn't do the same thing, because in a sense, he has been inoculated. But I don't know anything really about him or his habits. So somebody who else knows him might be able to fill people in more than that. But the point is that with that out there, a number of things became pretty apparent last week, I think, about the administration that maybe people weren't paying attention to. So on the heels of that whole brouhaha, you had what appeared to.
I just want to say, because this is getting buried, I just want to repeat again what Jimmy Kimmel said that started this whole thing, okay? He said, we hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. This is exactly what Richardson is saying, which is that the Trump administration tried to weaponize, right? And they're trying to use the murder of Charlie Kirk so that people stop criticizing them. When in fact, people may have stopped criticizing them for a time being or whatever, momentarily, because of the murder of Charlie Kirk. You see how this is deranged. But anyway, let's keep going. That's my opinion of the deranged part.
Be a direct message from Trump to Attorney General Pam Bondi, in which he expressed fury that the interim nominee, the interim person who was the the U.S. attorney for the district that was looking at whether or not New York Attorney General Letitia James had committed mortgage fraud, which seemed pretty clearly to be a trumped up charge, that hadn't really happened. And this is an attempt of the administration to use the law to go after her.
Oh,
and it's also expressed fury that
trumped up charges. You mean going after your political opponents? Okay, with the law. Okay.
That same person had decided not to pursue a case against James Comey, the former FBI director, who had refused to drop the case looking into whether members of Trump's 2016 campaign had been working alongside Russian operatives, or the connections between the two. Both of them were, the administration had pushed investigations of them based on what really seemed to be trumped up charges. And this interim U.S. attorney, Eric Siebert, who was very well regarded both by Republicans and by Democrats, said, I'm not going to prosecute this. I don't have evidence for that. And Trump wrote what appeared to be a direct message that he then, of course, posted for everyone to see to Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, and said, this is ridiculous. You've got to go after these guys. We know they've committed crimes. I can just tell they've committed crimes, and we have to go after them. And then he reiterated that to reporters in the Oval Office. And of course, that weaponization of the political,
just trying to cram all this in. I get it.
Seeing it in black and white like that from the president really opened up the eyes of a lot of people to recognize that anybody could be next. Crossing the president made it clear that they could find someone, as was quoted on social media. That's something that one of the members of communist secret police forces have said, find the man and I'll show you the crime. I'll find something on anybody. And of course that would be
not like everybody else has been persecuted
for any other presidency.
Or what they say on the
internet.
Was
also the fact that Tom Homan, who is now Trump's border czar, his actual title is that he's an advisor to the president, is apparently, allegedly, on video. The FBI caught him on video in 2024, accepting a bag of worth.
Apparently, allegedly, and then rubbing her throat. Apparently, allegedly, and then going like this. So, right. So that apparently, allegedly, about Tom Homan.
Of $50,000 with $50,000 in it, in exchange for promising the FBI agents who were posing as business people that he would make sure they got contracts in border security in a new Trump administration. And the response in the administration to that was, first, well, he didn't commit a crime, even though that is a crime, and it certainly appears to be a crime. And secondly, he then said, well, the White House said he didn't ever take the money. And then Homan went out in public and said, well, what I did wasn't a crime. Well, again, this is a group of people who spent 4 years trying to pin on Joe Biden the idea that he had somehow accepted a bribe, or that his son had accepted.
Honey, he admitted it. He said it himself about calling the DA or whoever it was and get that guy fired. Tom Homan, yeah. So it's like, oh, allegedly over here, but then this was an actual allegedly case where Homan allegedly accepted $50,000 in a bag from the fast casual chain Kava at a meeting point in Texas from FBI officials who were posing as government contractors after the now Trump appointee reportedly indicated he would facilitate securing contracts for them once Trump took office. MSNBC wrote that the transaction was captured on video cameras, while the New York Times reports the audio was recorded, though the details of those alleged recordings have not been reported. So you're not using official, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're saying that you're using official sources, but you just said allegedly, you just said it right there. And so you're spreading this information, which is not, you're not giving the full story. You're just giving like a little clip of it. And you're not actually, maybe you even put it in the comments? No, of the sources of the whole story. So why was Homan investigated? So you're saying the same way that Letitia James is being trumped up charges, we could say the very same thing about Tom Homan, that these were trumped up charges, because this is all allegedly. Even they're saying it in the article, even Forbes.com is saying, and the government did not charge Homan at the time and instead waited to see if he would grant the contracts once he took office. But after Trump's inauguration, the investigation stalled and was officially closed. You have no idea. You don't. You have no idea.
Accepted abroad. And now they're saying, oh, never mind, I don't care. So there were all of those areas. And then there were a couple of others as well. The other one that jumps out are the extraordinary attacks on the American public health system by Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And that has been shown through changes to the vaccination schedule. And if you recall, he promised Senator Bill Cassidy from Louisiana, who is himself a doctor, Robert Kennedy is not, that he wouldn't make changes to the vaccine systems in the US. And of course, as soon as he was confirmed, Kennedy went ahead and did that. He fired a whole bunch of people who are on the advisory committee for vaccines, and then they have begun the process of changing the vaccine schedules. And doctors and public health people recognize that this is a ticking time bomb. And similarly, the cuts to funding for cancer, for example, and the many ways in which the administration is attacking the public health system are really deeply problematic. And there is also, of course, what happened yesterday when Trump said he would have the FDA announce to physicians that for pregnant women to take acetaminophen during their pregnancies creates a very high risk of autism in their baby.
It increases their risk. It can increase their risk. Tylenol is generally not recommended when you're pregnant anyway, just like lunch meat, just like sushi, just like all the other things that are advised against using during pregnancy. It's not a wild thing to say. And you're right, what you're saying is not what he said.
Babies. There's just no evidence for that. There's been no change in the evidence we have. Okay. This is part of the crusade that that Kennedy has been on. But again, doctors and public health people recognize that this is wildly dangerous for our public health system and for the American people. So all of those things happened at once. But why do things feel different? So I'm going to step back a little bit here and remind you that Trump all along has, since 2016, has been doing things that for any other president would be deal breakers. And he has never had to grapple with the consequences because the Republican Party supported him. No matter what he did, the Republican Party supported him.
That's not true.
Which itself is deeply problematic, but also a really...
The Republican Party was supporting him when they were indicting him 2 times, and when the J6 committee came out. Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, all those Republicans that aren't in office anymore, they were all with Trump, right? The Republican Party was always with Trump. What are you talking about?
The interesting moment in our political history that people who otherwise have taken oaths to the Constitution are walking away from their power to give everything over to one guy. But now things are different. And they feel different, I think, because Trump can no longer command the votes that he could even as recently as November 2024. And what I mean by that,
I feel like you're just taking a point and then stacking it with, if things feel different now. Dude, Charlie Kirk is that happened, what you said 10 days ago. That's why things feel different, first of all, because people, you guys can no longer keep just pounding the pavement with these lies, right? And narratives that aren't working. They may be working to your audience in a way, right? But aren't you trying to change hearts and minds? Aren't you trying to build up your social media accounts and do platforms and go to YouTube and encourage people to speak up and speak out? Aren't you encouraging people to do that? So, you know, yeah, things are not the same because of what happened to Charlie Kirk. And it's just getting hard, and people are recognizing and they're seeing how just, yeah, ridiculous things have become. And it's not because they're upset with Trump or whatever. I mean, yeah, there's some criticisms there for sure. As any person who voted for Trump would tell you, any person that voted for Trump would tell you. Nobody thinks that he's perfect. Nobody thinks that I mean, yeah, there are definitely things that he needs to do, for sure. I know you don't talk about this a lot, but a part of the voter bloc for Trump was an anti-war. I'll give you some help here. Okay, I'll help you out a little bit. People don't want people don't want. I mean, that's what America First means, is that we have people in our country that need our help. We have people who, I mean, we have suicide rates, we have addictions, we have drug abuse, we have alcoholism, we have job loss, we have broken homes, broken families, domestic issues, again, just disease and illness. There's a lot of things that need to be fixed in our country. We do not want our government spending money meddling in other countries. The USAID, NED, all that stuff. We don't want social programs in other countries. And that's where we disagree. You are okay with that. You want the Biden administration to be doing all of these things in other countries. You want all this money to be spent in the other countries. Whereas we want out of the foreign entanglements. We want denuclearization, for people that know what that is. We don't want nuclear war. We want diplomacy, like actual diplomacy, not the US doing a rules-based order, not the US saying we're the best and we're going to do. I know that Trump says that. I know that Trump, trumps up the rhetoric. Everybody, and people are upset with Trump, right? See, you're getting the story all wrong, but people are upset with Trump. But people are finally starting to get it, I think. People that you don't know how to talk to. But, with the thing that Trump just said about the Ukraine conflict, right? Right. And the things that he was saying about Russia and stuff, you could look at that and be like, oh, he's talking shit on Russia and all that stuff. Right. So, Blinken already said about this, that this was, that the US isn't the only game in town anymore, in so many words. So, so this is what it looks like. And so there are things that people are upset with Trump about. They want the Ukraine conflict to end. But what they don't want, they want the genocide in Gaza to end. What people don't want is our civilization to be controlled by globalists and people that don't actually care about our country, don't actually care about our people, don't care about our society. They don't want money spent on foreign wars. They don't want money spent on other countries and other organizations, and the corruption that occurs in all those places when US tax dollars and the budget is being sent, and who even knows if it's going to the people that they say it's going to, right? We don't want drugs coming into the country. We don't want crime. These are all this is all Agenda 47. So yes, so there are overt things that MAGA is upset with Trump about. But it's, and they're talking about the Epstein list. You're probably going to bring that up. They're talking about the Epstein list, but there's people that want to make it out to be that Trump, there's people doing misinformation with that stuff too. Okay. But most people, again, they just want to, have a job that is safe, that they're not, gonna safety laws when it comes to like working in a factory and whatnot. We want clean air. We want food that's not poisoned. We want to choose what goes into our kids' bodies. I mean, this is all basic stuff. People don't, um, people don't want to be advocating and supporting all of these other things. So people don't actually really care about the Epstein list. And I don't know why Democrats do either, because people already know that this is about a blackmailing ring. This isn't about who's on the list. That stuff's going to work itself out. And there's court cases that are going on right now with victims right now. So there's a lot of confusion, and I think that you're misleading your audience as to like what what MAGA is, who MAGA is, what they care about, and whatever, and like why people are upset with Trump. I think people don't want to see, especially being censored for, the hate speech thing is, you're even defending Tucker Carlson, saying that with the hate speech, like that, we can't be deeming things we disagree with as hate speech. But it's weird that you're not making the connection that the free speech guy was just taken out publicly, right? Because you want to demonize him. It would even be easier for you, since he's already passed and can't defend himself, wouldn't you, to actually say that he was for free speech? Like, but that would be counteract. Like, you couldn't do that, right? You couldn't acknowledge that, because your whole story depends on you lying about who he was and what he did, because of all the just wrong things that you've already said about him. But that would be actually a little bit easier for you if you could make that switch. If you could say he was at least advocating for public debate, he was at least not a keyboard warrior. He at least went out there and got people to engage with each other. You may not have agreed with what he said, but he never advocated for violence. In fact, he said we need to talk to each other and we need to have these discourses. And he was trying to hold people of institutions accountable, of like, you can't be, forcing these narratives. You have to have debate. And I don't know if you remember, but everybody was censored off of social media for even questioning what happened in 2020, when it came to the masks, when it came to the jabs, when it came to the lockdowns and stuff. People got kicked off of Facebook. Just regular people got kicked off of Facebook. Not even people with yes, people with a huge following that they'll never get their accounts back again. But even just regular people that didn't have a lot of everybody, you couldn't use words. You understand? You couldn't use words. Like, you couldn't write the word vaccine on Facebook. And that was even for years before that. You couldn't write the word vaccine. You had to use so for now, you see where we are now, all the way to present day. Okay.
Is that the Make America Healthy Again, the MAHA people, are furious at Kennedy for making a link between autism and acetaminophen or Tylenol. They wanted to see him say there was a link between autism and vaccines. And they're very angry that he did not do that. They're also angry that he has backed away from his previous claims about autism and pesticides.
Okay. So first of all, they did say, don't give a baby the hepatitis B vaccine. Wait until they're older. That's that was the first time a US president ever said that from the podium, as an official statement. That is official ever said that from the government. Okay. So that's actually pretty big. They also are recommending to separate the MMR vaccine. Okay. So I still so they did make a connection with vaccines. So I don't know where you're getting that he didn't go super hard on it. What everybody heard was about the Tylenol. And what everybody else is upset about is that, there's just there's divisions within the autism community as well, because there's high functioning people with autism. There's some people that you wouldn't even know they have autism. It's a huge spectrum. So then there's other very severe cases where children are nonverbal, and not even just that they're nonverbal, but that they're abusive, that they, I mean, you can look it up. You can look these things up. I mean, there's one woman on Instagram, a mom who she's like, can't get the support because her child would maybe have to be institutionalized, and she doesn't want to do that. And the medications are that she's tried different medications, and it's a really sad story. Like, and I don't even know where she stands on this issue, and she's just one of others. This has been a really, really long time coming, and I understand people are upset about it, and people in disability communities and people in healthcare, and there's just a range of responses that we've seen. And not even making jokes about it, because there are plenty of an opportunity to do that. But I understand that on a serious note, it's a very sensitive issue for a lot of people. But what everybody took from that was the fact that Trump didn't say acetaminophen correctly. Okay. But he's not giving the advice. He's just saying it, right? So there are medical professionals that are behind him that are saying it, right? So you're saying like Kennedy wasn't a doctor. Well, do you know who was the director of Health and Human Services before Kennedy, right? Right? Dr. Levine. Y'all know who that is? Look up Health and Human Services Levine. What was their first name? Okay. That person was from Pennsylvania. That person failed tremendously at their position in the government during the pandemic. Okay. So you want to talk about how Kennedy's not even a doctor or whatever. Okay. So anyway, so you're saying that that MAHA, that there's just, this is why it feels different, because MAHA is split on this issue, because we wanted them to come out. So you're actually even admitting something that you won't even acknowledge as a benefit for you, right? Because you don't want to see Kennedy saying that there's a connection between vaccines and autism. So now you're saying that Maha's so mad because they wanted him to say that, and he didn't? So wouldn't you say something positive about? Wouldn't that be, you know what I'm saying? Like, wouldn't that be a check in your column for him? And then he hasn't made, and they really want him to make the connection between autism and pesticides, and he didn't? So do you think that he should have made that claim? Are you saying, I mean, right? So I'm trying, so you can at least at this point say something like, it would just be cooler if you did. It would be cooler if you could make that connection for yourself and be like, yeah, like, oh, he didn't. So you're, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're admitting that he did something that you would agree with, but you're using it as you're using it as evidence to support that things feel different now in your favor. And I would say that based on what you said about Kennedy, that, yeah, it would be in your favor, I guess, but that's also sort of not what happened, because he did say those things about the vaccines. So again, sensitive issue.
Which is another thing that, again, a lot of researchers were exploring, and now he has backed off on that. So even though the Kennedy is infuriating people like me who care about vaccines and public health, he's also infuriating those people who turned out for Trump because he is not delivering on their pet peeves. Similarly, one of the big things for Trump getting into office.
Okay, so does that mean then that you can align with MAGA in some ways? You see what we're doing here? Like, why aren't you making the connections that you're implying? And I don't even know how long, I got to jump off here, but you've made a ton of claims. You've tried to make a ton of connections. Why wouldn't you make the connection then? If we're trying to bring people together, I mean, because this show is obviously an entertainment show. Hopefully you are entertained, but it's called Beyond the Lines, right? So we're actually trying to go beyond the party lines and trying to look at different things, with the idea that we are more alike than we are unalike. I've said that multiple times. And as my own comms person, I should put together something like that. But it would appear to me that you are using the claims that you want to use to make your point, but not actually making the conclusion that, oh, maybe we all can criticize our, you know, the government. Maybe we can't criticize, like, but could you do that when Biden was in office? Like, you're not doing that for anybody on the Democrat side. It's always just the Republicans and always just Trump and it's always just MAGA. But so maybe, yeah, maybe MAGA and MAHA aren't Trump loyalists then, based on what you're saying. I don't know. I'm just going off of what you're saying, I think. So one more minute and then we're going to jump off.
In 2024 were the people who wanted to see the release of the Epstein files. That is the government files that were compiled during the investigation of Jeffrey Epstein, a convicted sex offender. And
so the term Epstein files wasn't ever in the zeitgeist of the internet world until Pam Bondi injected it in February of 2024. And Biden was in office for how long? Trump was in office. Like, how come the Epstein files never came up? How come nobody cared about Epstein? I don't know. I'm just asking. I don't know the answer. So on that note, because we have still more to go, but I got to jump off here. Let me just stop sharing here. We can see where we're at with the everything you hoped for and more. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Like and subscribe, and I will catch you next time.